reason I do flexible seating is because I believe it's what's best for kids. It allows them to be comfortable, and just like adults, students should be able to make decisions. We don't go home and grade papers while we're sitting at the kitchen table. We sit on our couch, we're comfortable. It also has made a huge difference in student behavior and student engagement. When students are comfortable, they're more likely to be listening to what you're saying. They're not distracted by their discomforts. And the student behavior aspect, when they're making those choices for themselves, then they're more likely to stay out of those situations that cause them to get into trouble. When you walk into my room, there's a huge wow factor just because it doesn't look like your typical classroom, but a lot of thought and energy went into setting up my classroom. I made a lot of mistakes when I was setting it up. I originally had my couch back here actually, and that was a huge mess. I've learned that if I put the things where students are taller towards the outside, and then the things get shorter towards the center of the room, or actually more towards the board, then students can see from wherever they're at, but I can also see the students wherever they're at. I do, even as a middle school teacher, make all my kids come down to the carpet at times. It seems silly until you see them do it, and it just gets them up and moving, and it gets them all close together. They also get to choose their seats every day. I do ask that they try and vary where they're sat so that people get to sit everywhere, but it's a huge thing for middle school that they don't want to be late to class because they don't want to be the last one to pick a seat. So my very first year, towards the end of the year, I decided after doing a lot of research that I wanted to give flexible seating a try. It was a terrible choice at the time. I had very little classroom management, and having flexible seating does require strong classroom management. But at that time, I went to Donors Choose and I asked for a set of clipboards so that my kids could sit wherever they wanted. And I asked for yoga balls and some cubbies so that my students had a spot to put their things, because I did not have cubbies in my classroom where I was at my first year. And I ended up receiving those things. I've since done away with the yoga balls because I can't handle the bouncing, and you have to know what works for you. But little by little, things came. 2 years ago, when I went back to flexible seating because I took a year off because my principal didn't think we had the space for it at my last school, and I convinced her otherwise. I had some camp chairs and the crates that I have now and the tall stools my dad and I built, and that was all I had. And slowly but surely I've built things. I've asked for donations. Most of what you see in my classroom has either been donated or my father and I built, with the exception of my favorite, which is the booth. It's probably my kid's favorite, and I found that at the MSU Surplus store for $5. So don't be afraid to get out there and ask. Don't be afraid to look for things at cheap places, garage sale. If you're really interested in flexible seating, lower some of your tables to the floor. I use cinder blocks that cost less than $2 a piece to make one of my tables higher originally, so that my students had a standing desk. There's a lot of things you can do that don't cost anything, and there's a lot of things that you can do that cost very little if it's something you're interested in trying.